I know you're quite busy traveling the world. Netherlands and London. I saw you have been there. How was it?
It was good. It was good. Yeah, but don't and not a well, I'm not a worldly traveler or anything. These are the first conferences that I've ever been invited to speak at. So,
Okay.
it's still very new for me.
Yeah. I really appreciate that you're taking the time. I reached out to you because I realized that some companies, or a lot of companies, actually have a problem when it comes to copywriting. And I'm working with a lot of clients, and yeah, we set up first A/B testing processes, trying to implement a testing program. And what I experienced so far is that when it comes to copywriting, it's totally underestimated, right? It starts with, hey, we need to write a headline, we need to write some copies. And then the first person who realizes that we need to write copies, put some words together, sends it out to the next person. The next person has a different opinion, different mood, different attitude,
Mhm.
and doesn't like the wordings and rewrites it, sends it back to the person who wrote it, and basically says, hey, this is my feedback. We should use these words. And then this person, also same situation, different feelings, different attitude, different opinion, looks at the wordings and says, no, this is not what we need. And then this process actually goes on for can go on quite long. I have seen quite some escalation of this process, even to the management. Yeah. And in the end of the day, the highest paid person's opinion matters, and no one wants to take the responsibility. And then you take what the CEO is basically writing, which is, I think, not appropriate process, because in the end of the day, CEO has other topics to do, other tasks to do, and yeah, that so I wanted to talk to someone who does copywriting really well, because I also, when I wrote the headline for our webinar, for our little conversation here, had the same situation. I wrote a headline. I was like, oh, wow, this is genius. My wife looked at it and said, no, we cannot say that. This is not catchy, etc. And then I was like, okay, then let's ask Eden. And Eden came up with something we both liked. So this is actually exactly what copywriting is about, to find something that resonates with a lot of people now. And yeah, now I have some questions for you. And the first one is, how do you do it? How do you put the magic into the word? What's your trick?
Yeah, absolutely. So to answer that, I think I've been spoiled. I got spoiled with that regards because I spent 6 years studying in university anthropology and sociology, and the whole concept of anthropology is learning how to see the world from someone else's perspective. So this is really important when you're working with, for example, anything relating to the end customer. So customer services, UX, UX research, UX design, and of course things like copywriting as well, graphic design and things like that as well, of course, because you understand that you're not just creating something that because you want to communicate something. You understand that it has to be structured, or it has to be designed, or it has to be engineered in a way that the other side is going to see what you want, what they need to see, what they should see. So it's this constant reflect. You're jumping in between writing or expressing ideas as they come out of your own head, and then actually trying to put yourself in someone else's shoes and say, okay, so how would someone else see it? Trying to imagine yourself as someone else, and then how they would actually see that, or how it would make sense to them. Small example, even when, for example, when I'm writing emails for clients now, I'll write an email in a Google Doc, but then I'll actually paste it into Gmail, and then I'll send it to myself as an email. And the difference, just to get that understanding of how it's going to actually look on the end before someone's actually receiving it. Yes, it's this constant back and forth of trying to understand how someone's going to perceive it as well. So one of the things that's really hard with writing copy is often that I often work with wireframes as well. So while I'm writing the copy, I'm imagining how it's going to appear on the page. And actually then a lot of the heavy editing happens up front in the wireframe even before I present the first draft to the client, or it happens in the email that I've sent myself, and I can see immediately this needs to be taken out, or that needs to be taken out, or these two sections need to be swapped for greater clarity. So it's always trying to put yourself in someone else's perspective to have that look, have that reflective look back on the work. It's really, really hard to do.
Yeah.
because of course, again, we have strategic business goals that we want to achieve, but the customer doesn't need to have all the context or all the information that we need in order to take the action that we want them to take.
Okay, that sounds interesting. And then, like, from your university and from your experience, from your studies, are there any other tricks? Because I mean, I have a psychology background and psychology and marketing, right? And I would say what I learned is that I'm just like everyone else. So it's like I know a lot of myself. And do you have any tricks how you like get into the shoes of your customers? Yeah. Besides from writing emails to yourself and receiving your own emails, which I think is a really nice trick. So what do you think, for instance, about personas, or do you have like any other model or framework you use? Like in psychology, we use the Big Five model, which is used but kind of hard to take and to use for copywriting, I would say. But yeah, I would be curious what frameworks you're using.
Absolutely. So not a specific framework, but the goal is to try and get to that end customer as much as possible. So, for example, one of the things that I really like to do is to go on Reddit and to read threads about the target persona, about the target audience, and how they even communicate with each other. So in essence, you become like a fly on the wall, and you're hearing the conversation, you're seeing how people communicate with each other without the barriers, because you're an unseen observer. It's very different, for example, say compared to a focus group where there's someone running the show, and there's usually all these kind of social dynamics that happen within the group. Someone's going to lead and everyone's going to follow. There's groupthink and all these kind of things happen, and then often even in customer interviews, when you do one-on-one interviews, sometimes people don't say what they really think. They say what they think you want to hear. So it's you often can't always get to the bottom of things are difficult. So customer interviews are a good way. I like to do them one-on-one with customers, because then it really lets them open up and they feel relaxed. Tell them that it's going to be anonymized, so their information is not going to be shared with the clients. The client won't know who said what. I find that is really good in terms of breaking the ice, so that they feel comfortable to actually open up and share about their experiences more honestly or more truthfully. At the same time, though, Reddit is a great thing, or just that social listening, like on LinkedIn. So look at targeting a specific audience with a specific job title. What kind of posts they're writing about? What are those job titles commenting on other people's posts? So what do they think from a peer level and things like that? It's very difficult to get access to gated communities like private Slack groups and private communities and things like that, which is very hard. Facebook groups are kind of dead. They don't really do much these days. But so failing that, just trying to get to the customer as much as possible and listen to how they communicate amongst themselves, not just when I'm asking a question. Listen to how, because then they're talking to me, listen how they talk amongst themselves, what they like, what they don't like. Try to get that deep understanding of what a day in their life looks like outside of what I'm trying to achieve or how I'm trying to improve their life. I'll give you a small example. We once had a campaign that was, we were working on a lead generation campaign that was targeting chief information security officers. Great, very niche position as well. But at the same time, I wasn't sure about the tactics that they were using or what we were trying to communicate in the copy. And when I found actually on Reddit a thread that it said, I'm a CISO at a Fortune 500 company, ask me anything. And people asking questions like, so how many hours of sleep do you get a night? He said 4. Like he or she said 4. Like I'm lucky. He said 4, and I'm lucky if I get 12 hours once a month. And that changes your entire perspective of how this person might respond to a cold email or an ad that they're going to come across on a platform. You think this person has like 1 millisecond to grab their attention. You have to have a very powerful message. There's no time for fluff. There is no, you cannot do the niceties. You have to come hard hitting at the same time. So it's, or they say, I'm not the person that actually evaluates the decision. I get my lower manager to do the research. They come and they present me 2-3 proposals and they pick the best one. So maybe they're not even the right person that they're targeting in the first place. They need to be targeting a level down, because that's a person who's going to put the proposal in front of the CISO.
Yeah.
So it's a huge shift in understanding. You can't just blindly, so it changes who you're targeting, it changes your understanding of the buyer persona, and that affects again what you're going to say or what messages you're going to share in order to help capture their attention and get them to hopefully convert.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, interesting. I actually had one question just came up. It's like there's still, I mean, this is so customer focused, right? And my first process I was explaining is as well that the CEO after a while might get involved so much, right? That they like basically saying, hey, I know everything because like the people in the company couldn't figure it out. And then they just listen to him and then he gets the feeling of, hey, I know it all and I know my customers. I have experienced actually then when you even with test results that if the CEO or if someone in a high rank has a different opinion about a test or about the outcome of a test or even about a copy, and you said, hey, this is coming from your customer. Yeah, this is your customer. And then they give you, okay, the customer is wrong. Yeah.
Okay, then that's a different problem. That's a whole different problem altogether. That's not something that we can fix.
Yeah, that's
the
true.
best you can do is run that test on the slide and then actually show them the data. I mean, but then it's really hard to do that though, because
yeah, that's true. And then they also
yeah.
tell me that data is wrong and the customer is wrong and you only talk to a certain amount of people and he has more knowledge about all that. For me, it's always hard to argue with that. Yeah, in the end of the day, CEO and customers, and you like in between and what to do, right? In the end, it's the decision of the CEO.
It is.
Yeah.
Is ultimately. So that's when I'm working with a client, for example. So one of the first things I do is I like to meet with the CEO. So especially if it's a really big project like website copywriting, where we're really going back, we have to go back and define the company's vision and mission and all of these core pieces so that we make sure that the right messages are being communicated in the right places. So we're redoing the entire website because the website isn't currently converting. We need to redo the whole thing. So the first thing I like to do is actually speak to the CEO. So, look, I need to get your feedback, get your opinion, because as the CEO, you hold the strategic direction. And that helps, that I find usually helps set the right tone so that the CEO or the founder feels like they're involved or that they're being heard. And it's not just a marketing thing or a CRO thing. It's actually they're having active participation in that. Again, websites and especially specific campaigns, there'll be a lot of stakeholders involved on a lot of different levels that will want to have their voice heard as part of it. So if you try to make them feel involved in the early stages, usually helps ease up the friction in the later stages by saying, well, look, yes, we heard you at the beginning, but then this is what the data says. This is what the information we collected from customers. So the solution we're proposing is this, and then move it the next step forward. That's, again, still there's those situations where at the end of the day, it's a client's decision to make. We can only do so much. We can't make up their mind for them.
Yeah, true. I also wanted to ask you what a good copy actually means. Like when I read your website, yeah, I mean, we have discussed this already before though, but I went through your website and there was one part which I really liked, which is really on the bottom of the page, which I was already thinking, okay, it's the bottom of the page. Yeah, it's like usually everyone puts high focus on the first view and everything has to be in the first view, trust, bullet points, benefits, CTAs, headlines, visuals, and there's like everything has to be in the first view because people don't scroll. And then I scrolled down your page and I found like the best copy actually I found on the bottom of the page where I was saying, psst, hey, over here. And then there's a little emoji waving at me. And then it says, if you're reading this, you're probably means you're a founder CEO, mad scientist driven, and then it gives you all the different situations and all the different kind of people who you could possibly be. And I really liked that because I was on the bottom of the page and it was like, hey, I got you. I literally had this visual in my head that you are standing there and waving your hand. And it's like, it was a moment there, right? On the bottom of the page. So yeah, I wanted to ask you, what makes a good copy for you? Where would you say, okay, is it your feeling that you say, okay, this is a good copy now, or do you have a checklist where you say, I did A, B, and C, and this makes it a good copy? Or is it a lot of, because what I also realized when I do the research for my customers, that after a while I have so much information that I cannot say it's this and this and this reason, but it's more like it feels right for the research I have done. You know, it's like sometimes it's kind of hard to extract and say it's this and this and this that makes it a good copy, but it feels right for what I have done the last couple of weeks from research point of view.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So I wanted to hear, how's it for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and to your point, one of the things about really good copy is it's something that it naturally pulls the reader into reading it. So, you know, good copy is not copy that you notice. It's not, we're not talking about copy that's on a billboard over a freeway that it's supposed to make people feel something, or a print ad in a magazine that it's one line and it's like, oh, this is a fantastic ad, you know, it's so funny, or it's so witty, or it makes you think. When we're talking about conversion copy, it's a very different ball game. Again, a lot of it's online, a lot of it's in these assets. We're looking to inspire or encourage the reader to perform an action as a result of reading the copy. So if the readers are encouraged to do that, and if we see increase in conversion rates, then we know the copy is good. Whether it's good on a qualitative level, like is it particularly smart or particularly funny or particularly creative, those are additional layers. But when we're looking at conversion copywriting specifically, it's not so much about the voice, it's not so much about the tone. Those, they do have an impact. It's not so much about the brand voice and tone, or if it's really funny or something, but if it helps achieve that goal. So there are multiple different ways that you could write that same sentence and have it achieve that goal. And again, this is where it's a combination of, it's helping the client achieve their strategic goals, achieve their outcomes for this project, as well as it's actually encouraging it's connecting with the customer on that level and encouraging them to take that action. It's motivating them, inspiring them to take that action. So that could be, if the customer likes a funny brand voice or likes jokes, and you have a strong joke line, you know, you're not going to choose just a bland line to get them to convert. You're going to infuse some of that, because you know that's what the customer likes, and that's going to also help them convert. Again, the bottom line is it helping the customer to do the thing that we want them to do, or to think, or to feel what we want them to by the end of that. So it's that kind of engineering as a result. So again, as you mentioned, it's very hard to, I guess, quantify good copy. Because it is very, very qualitative, and it really depends on the target audience, the device they're using, what type of asset. It's a UX pop-up, it's a website, it's a landing page, it's an ad, it's an email. There's so many variables that go into it. So once you actually narrow it down, though, and you have those parameters are clear, it's then very easy to evaluate what is good copy or what is not good copy.
Yeah, that's true. For me, it's like, I mean, there's one book which I really like. It's called Momentum. It's from one guy. He is founder of an advertising agency here in Germany, one of the biggest, from Jung Format. And he's also a copywriter. And he said, basically, when he creates a momentum, right? When he says, okay, the customer feels like something, he's in a moment, that he caught him in a moment. And he gives this example. He's working advertising, and he's a copywriter, and he walks around in the woods, and then he sees a sign and reads that sign, or it's like an information board about birds, and he reads that. And he said he doesn't care about birds, but he reads it anyways. And the reason why he read it is because he had a lack of information. He was running around through the woods, and he couldn't see, he just saw trees everywhere. So he didn't care about trees anymore. And then he was happy to see some information in the woods, because he was always just busy with his thoughts. And this was his momentum, where he said, I don't care about birds, but I read it anyways, because it was the only information I was able to get. So I think this is also interesting because right now information are actually our trees. Yeah, we have so much information and we're getting so much input every day. Yeah, and maybe we can actually say, okay, what is actually the momentum? Like, what does the customer do before, and then in the next step, what is the thing for the customer that actually, like, what does he expect and what can actually happen? Yeah, on the web, which I thought is an interesting thought, though.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a great quote by a former admin, Howard Gossage, that it says people don't read advertising, they read what interests them, and sometimes it's advertising. So people will happily read copy if it's interesting to them. So that's why we often find this debate where people say, no, copy has to be short, it has to be this, people don't read online. People only watch videos, but at the end of the day, well, people do actually read, and they read far more than they realize. But we don't read something when it's boring, which is very true. Often that can be long form copy, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily long form copy. And to your point, one of the things that I found, it usually dramatically increases conversion rates, is sometimes doubling or even tripling the amount of copy that's on the page, because there's not enough information for the reader to actually want to take that next step. There's not enough setup or enough context to take them from that point of, I just landed on this page, to actually, I want to convert right now. So it's really, it goes against logic. You think just tell them what they need to do and they'll do it, but actually no, sometimes you have to read, as you mentioned, the information about birds. They might not really care about it, but they feel now he has that information and he feels empowered to take the next step. As a result, now he can actually go and look at the woods in a different way as a result of reading that information. So it's the same with the copy. Sometimes they don't have enough information. They come to the page, they are looking to collect that, to read that, to absorb it, and as a result, then they can take that next step.
Yeah, and also what I experience is that there are so many rules out there for copywriting. Yeah, this has to be short, it has to be active, it has to be a question. You have to put the keywords in there, the side keywords, and then it has to follow a certain reading score, EA score. Are you working with these kind of tools, actually, with these scoring tools that you can put the copy in there and tells you how easy is the copy to read, how easy to understand?
So usually not so much the SEO keyword tools and things like that. That's usually not in my area. I'm not an SEO expert. I wish I was, but it's not usually the area that I work in. I can incorporate SEO words if needed, but it's best if I work with an expert on that. To your other point, though, I usually use tools like the Hemingway app or the Flesch Kincaid grade reading scale, because that gives you an idea of how complicated the copy is to understand. So, and that affects it for two reasons. One, if you know the audience is on a highly intellectual level, so you're targeting scientists, professors, doctors, you are targeting someone that, so you are targeting them online, which everyone says it should be a grade 4 to 6 reading level, but intellectually they're at a much higher level and they're expecting to see something more at this level. If you give them something at this level, they're going to feel it's insulting their intelligence. You need to give them something that's a bit more high level that makes them feel comfortable to read it. At the same time, so the way you would write copy, it's okay, very okay to write for a much higher grade reading level, but sometimes you have copy that is just so complicated and you don't know where you can begin to break it down. And that's having an understanding, okay, so this is currently at a grade 11 reading level. If we need to bring it down, we need to shorten the sentences, we can split up the copy this way to bring it down to even a grade 7 or a grade 6 or grade 8 reading level. And that's because, again, depending on the target audience, how complicated the copy is how hard it's going to be for someone to read it. The cognitive load is greater for copy. That's more of a higher reading level. So again, unless they can handle that cognitive load easily, then that's fine. But if someone is clicking through and they're looking for an ad, they're on Facebook or they're on LinkedIn and they come across an ad, you don't want to give them a huge dump of a cognitive load, because they're gonna scroll right past it, because they're not in that state of mind to be able to process it. So you're gonna have a lower message. You can save the higher stuff for a different page.
That is actually interesting, because it's the the rule of thumb in conversion rate copywriting I hear it is keep it simple and stupid. But then what you're saying is basically if your target group is not simple and stupid, then don't do that, right? Then give them something they can work with, treat them with respect, even in the language, so they feel like that's the place to be, basically. Right?
Exactly. To your point, there's like a lot of marketers use language like effective, transformational, like all the life-changing, game changer. Every startup that has game changer somewhere in their copy, every startup is a game changer. Like these are terms that we would say offer out jargon or fluff, but at the same time, if the target audience uses those words all the time, it's very familiar, and we take them out of a sentence, even if they don't technically add value to the sentence, they add value to the sentence from a reader's perspective, because that helps them. Oh yeah, they're speaking the same language as me. That makes them feel that the copy is for them. So it's a fine line to walk, but that's why customer research is huge.
Yeah, that's true. But it's like me feeling a little bit weird when I talk in baby language to my children. It's like I'm talking their level, but for me it's like really not appropriate. But I'm going, let's say, to their level, and so they can easily pick up the words as well, because they don't know all the words yet, right? So I need to use the same sentence structure. In the beginning, they have a totally different sentence structure. You just know, for instance, car and blue, and that's all they know, and then you have to adjust to that, right? It's actually also happening sometimes when you talk to people in real life that you adjust their words. And also what I realized is actually I was once on a vacation and there were like some people from Austria, and then after a week spending time with them, I start actually thinking in their language. I had their dialect in my head. I was like, okay, what is happening? This is not my dialect. But I think this is also something that you can easily adjust to as the language to other people. And you need to do that to be able to understand them, and they need to understand you, right?
It happens a lot, as you mentioned, in conversations. So for example, two people having a conversation, a French person and an American person. So a French person might start speaking unconsciously with a slightly more Americanized accent, and the American might start speaking with an actually slightly French accent. They might still be speaking English, but they might both be speaking French, but they'll make slight adjustments based on the feeling, and it's totally subconscious. It's because we're trying to come to a mutual point where we're able to understand each other better. It's fascinating. When I spent some time in the US and California when I was growing up, and I'm Australian, so when I go there when I used to speak with my parents there next to my friends, it was total Australian accent, and then I turn back and I speak to my friends and they were laughing at me. It's like, you're American here, you're Australian there. It's like, what are you doing? And I didn't even notice. It was completely, it's completely subconscious when it happens. But there is a huge difference. We subconsciously make those changes, those adjustments based on who we're talking to. But then when we have to put it in words on paper and it's something permanent, it's not fluid that we can fix in real time, it becomes much trickier. And that's why
it's also
my copy is so tricky.
I mean, on the website, right, you write something, but you don't get the feedback right away, right? Because when you talk to someone in real life, it's easier to adjust your language to them, because they give you feedback, and they also give you a tone of voice, they give you emotions, they give you certain vocabulary, right? And you can pick up on that and use that for your structures. But on a website, this is super difficult. How does your target audience talk, right? Because you don't hear them talking. So I guess in the beginning, you really need to talk to them, go on Reddit, go into panels, etc., talk to them and get an understanding, how do they actually talk, what's their rules for their language, basically, and then work with that on the website.
Absolutely.
Yeah, one important topic I wanted to talk about is we already talked a little bit about AI tools. Yeah. And last week, I don't know how it was for you, but my LinkedIn feed was full with AI posts, copywriting, and the ChatGPT was the topic of the week last week. And I think this is also going something that will be staying. And also when it comes to visuals, a lot of people share visuals on the internet, which has been generated by AI. They just type in some artist and then they get a picture of themselves and then share it on LinkedIn. Yeah, I wanted to hear your point of view on these kind of topics. What does AI do to your job, and how maybe will it also change in the future, or how are you already working with it? And yeah, maybe you also see some weaknesses of these tools.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we had, it's really funny, as you mentioned, when we had our first initial attempt at having this conversation, Chat GPT hadn't come out yet. And in the week and a bit since, it's like, oh, the world, it feels like the world is completely shifted.
Upside down. We all write our copies now with open Chat GPT. I feel like that's how I feel like right now, but I know that's not how it's going to be.
No, so there's a lot of things that come into play. I think one of the most important distinctions is that copywriting has always been primarily about the strategy. So if some people treat copywriting as just words, and if copywriting is just words, then ChatGPT is going to replace those kinds of writers, because it's all about stringing the sentence together as quickly, as cheaply as possible. So if you think like Content Mills, where it's paying $5 for a 100-word blog, for a 500-word blog post, like they're going to get wiped out, unfortunately. Anyway, it's not positive business model for the writers. It's not fair compensation for them anyway, but still, it's pretty much going to replace that need. Again, when it comes to copywriting, 80% of the work that goes into copywriting is a strategy. We don't know how to write or who to write for or what we need to write, and all of these different elements without having that strategy set first. So we can't actually write without having done that 80% of the work. What we can do now, though, is to take that strategy, input it into ChatGPT, and be able to help come out with some first drafts. One of the biggest issues for writers is that first draft, is breaking through that first draft. Once you have a first draft, you know what is wrong, what needs to be fixed, and what needs to be better. So that is going to be a huge shift, because it's going to help increase time efficiency and productivity for writers, so we won't get stuck on those mind blocks of how on earth am I going to say X, Y, Z, even though you have all the research sitting in front of you. Again, it's a common thing. It happens with everyone, happens with artists, creatives, everyone as well. So being able to generate some ideas based on that strategy that you have set, that's going to help kickstart the process and increase, as I mentioned, that efficiency with regards to it. If people are going to be using on it to write things for them, I'm not sure where that's going. And again, I do believe it will help with a lot of simpler task, as we see that it already does. Copy AI, Jasper, all these other tools that already exist, they already help people who are struggling to write in the first place, and that's a good thing, because anyway, they usually can't afford to work with a copywriter, or afford to work with a good one, or they have some skills that it's just that barrier of struggling, or English isn't their first language and they're often trying to write for an audience in English when English is their first language. So it helps them break through these kinds of barriers, which is really cool. Again, on the other hand, it's good for helping kickstart that part of the creative process, because there is still that creative element that goes into it. This is at least going to give you a base. Is it going to define everything? I'm not really sure, because again, it depends on what the quality of data that you put in. The other thing, as someone mentioned on a thread on LinkedIn, I'm not sure, I don't remember the original poster, but they said as well, it's also based on the total sum of information that it has processed or collected. So there can be some nuances, there can be some piece of information that might be incorrect. We need to be as well aware of misinformation. We'll need to make sure that we're putting the right facts and information in the first place, and not asking it to collectively scrape 200 blog posts and pull together a summary, because if that source information is incorrect, you're looking at 200 news articles and 30 of them are fake news. So it's actually relying on, it's pulling out fake news and it's taking it as fact and working off that. There'll be things that happen with the quality of data going into quality of output, but in terms of helping improve and speed up that ideation process, is going to be incredible. Like, you know, it took me 6 months to write the homepage for my own website when I first, because as a writer, you think about it too much sometimes. So having something that's going to, so you give it a prompt and it prompts you back. So it's kind of, it's a back and forth relationship. But just like, and someone I spoke with the other day, I spoke with the CEO of a copywriting AI tool, Anyword, and he actually said, just like calculators didn't replace mathematicians, everyone thought calculators came, mathematicians going to be out of job. No, they're still around. We still have maths. We still need people who have that thinking, who can do that. Even though we have master computers and we have all these things, you know, have all these possibilities, we still need mathematicians, but they're not out of a job. So it's going to be the same with copywriters, the same with marketers, the same with graphic designers. You know, they'll still be around, but it's going to enable us to work deeper on strategy and actually even enhance the creative aspects of our work as well. It's just being, I need to push out. And I did this once for a client. I had to write 200 variations of Google headlines, Google ad headlines, and it took me like a full week. You know, instead I can start with a few and prompt, and then I'll be able to tweak, fix, and still make it better, and then be able to use it. And it's going to help cut that workflow, that time to delivery for the client as well, in half or even less, you know, or half or even more.
Yeah, I also think that the AI, I mean, creativity is also like combining different kinds of information. This can also be considered as creativity, right? And then from taking two things, combining them into one, and have like out of this comes a spark. But this spark that happens in creativity, that needs to be judged emotionally. And I think this is something that the KI is definitely missing. In the end of the day, it's all about the judgment that the spark or the new idea or this input makes us tick, or makes us, like, you know, move forward and actually get something in us. And I think right now we are really hyping this because the AI is now writing poems which are collecting information from the internet, but they don't make me jump, you know, they don't make me like tick. It's like, okay, cool, the AI can write poems now, etc. And there's already a little glance of emotion in there, but it's not like, wow, you know, it's wow that the KI can do that, the algorithm can do it, but not, if I would take it and I wouldn't know this is coming from an AI or a human, I would be like, it's not really like getting me emotional, I would say.
That's right. A lot of people are saying lately the quality of LinkedIn content has gone down, and so a lot of people are using AI to write their posts for them, and you can see the level of the depth of the language, or the quality of the language has changed a bit. So as you understand, there's sometimes you can tell, but sometimes we can't tell though. But then again, that says a lot about the quality of the depth of language. So I think there's also some other implications that are going to come out as a result. So I think even those who are very, very good at writing, just like very good marketers and very good mathematicians, are going to become even more highly valued, because they will be able to use the best parts of these AI tools to go for even further. But those people who are more mediocre, or who are lower skilled, for example, in that quality, and it's going to be a challenge for them to stay relevant. It doesn't mean that they won't, but again, it doesn't mean that they won't, but it'll be a very different relationship, working relationship with a client. So for example, probably instead of a client needing 200 variations of Google headlines, they might ask the copywriter, come up with 10 really strong headlines, and then the client will pop that into ChatGPT, and it'll generate a few more, and then the client will go and test them all. The client still needs the copywriter, and will still need their thinking, the way they think, to help influence that. But the relationship will change, or the client will put it into ChatGPT, ask the copywriter what's good, what's not good. Copywriter will work, tweak, edit, etc., send them back to the client. So again, it'll be a much more collaborative process, rather than everything having to happen here in the copywriter's head. So
there's actually one copy I wanted to show you. I brought it with me. It's here. It's a product description for a barbecue. I would say I love barbecue, so I'm in the target group for barbecue grills, but the copy, yeah, I can just read it for you guys. The barbecue season has just arrived, and you are looking for a high quality yet expensive gas barbecue. Then we recommend the gas barbecue from Barbecue Pro. The grill series is especially suitable for a demanding and exact grill gourmet. The non-stick grill surface also prevents food from sticking when camping and is designed for a particularly long service life thanks to special coating. The adjustable and easy-to-use burners ensure perfect grilling results. A high efficiency of the burning guarantees that the short warm-up time and a long burn time. What do you think?
So I have to say it is very feature focused. So it is talking, it does weave in some of the benefits, but a lot of it is talking about this is a feature. So it has this type of flame, so it ensures a long burn time. It then doesn't take it to that next step. So what does having a long burn time mean? So you're not going to worry about, you can have a long barbecue that stretches into the hours of the evening. You don't have to worry about rushing out to get a replacement gas tank in the middle, in the middle of the barbecue or so. Again, something like that. So it's hard for me to evaluate just based on what you've read. But as well,
You see my screen? I'm sharing it on the stream.
Oh, I can't see it. Sorry, you should be able to share it.
Yeah, for me, it's also, but when I read it, it was like thinking the same. It's really feature oriented. And what I'm missing is like the outcome. Let's say it's a long lasting grill. Yeah, what do you have from that? It's like you save money, you can spend your money on something else, or you have a long burning time, means you have probably slow cooking, which makes the meat more juicy, which makes it a better enjoyment. And also for me, grilling is about this. It's a little dirty. I mean, that's how grilling is, you know. You don't want grilling all like clean and everything. Part of grilling is a little
It's a mess.
It's a mess. And you like it and it makes it taste good. And also this like sizzling of the steaks, I would like maybe add that a little bit. So you get like really into the scene of using the grill, you know. It's like the moment again. Yeah. So but it puts together, the AI put together the right features. Yeah, put it in the right order, I would say, combine and close the gaps in between the features, but it's not like wow.
But to your point, that's a starting point. So say someone was given, you were tasked with having to do this, you understand that it's not wow, you understand that the customer's going to be like, okay, it's not different to any other grill or any other thing that's out there, but it's a starting point that you can build on.
True
you know, you're able to say, well, this is wrong, or I need to extend this sentence here or add something else against it. It's that back and forth that I'm talking about. At least you've got something on the page. That is the biggest thing. But the other thing I mentioned, so the other something we had in the last conversation, that a lot of the copywriting models or tools, they work on given frameworks and structures. So it's like, this is a poem, this is how a poem is structured, this is how task, problem, agitation, solution is structured, this is AIDA, attention, interest, desire, action, this is how a typical headline is. It's taken headline formulas, taken this, take that, but there's a lot of copywriting that doesn't necessarily conform to those frameworks. So that's where that strategy and creativity still comes in. So for example, if you're using the voice of the customer, what AI can write, what the AI will generate, it can be relevant to them, but it's not necessarily in that voice of the customer. It's not the barbecue description. Hi, my name's Bill. I've had one of these barbecues for 5 years, and let me tell you what it does. It's fantastic. I love it. I use it. We did we slow cooked on it, and this is what it did. We did this, and meat stayed juicy. Even though we got messy, I was able to easy to clean. It's completely different. So it's still it's the same information across, but it's a very different voice and tone and perspective. But so again, you're using the actual voice of the customer to help you write that. At the same time, having those facts, having that information set up, is you know, is pretty good.
Yeah. All right. Cool. We're coming to the end, actually. I really enjoyed talking to you. It's so insightful. Um, Creative versus analytical thinking in your job. Because a lot of people think actually copywriting is just creative. I mean, I think we already learned that it's not just creative, it's also really analytical and research. How would you see it? How's the split? Is it a 50-50 split, or is it more towards creativity or leaning more towards analytical thinking? How is copywriting for you?
That's a good question. It's a good mix. If you'd asked me, be totally honest, if you'd asked me this maybe 2 years ago, I would have said it's 70% performance and 30% brand. I think my thinking, the brand, or so you'd say brand or creative, tone, voice, things like that. I think my thinking is probably still staying pretty much in that direction. So it's really 60%, it's 50 to 60% performance, and the rest of it is that brand or creativity. Again, now things are shifting because all these AI tools and ChatGPT has come out. So that creative element, brand, voice, tone, all those things are going to become a lot more important in terms of helping companies differentiate with their customer experiences. So it's no longer just whose copy is more clear, it's whose copy is more emotionally powerful or emotionally connecting with the reader. And that comes back to brand. And I've seen that as well in my previous work with clients. I used to work with a lot of performance marketing agencies. So the bottom line was performance. You know, that's what we were focused on. Brand voice was almost irrelevant because it often decreased performance that we saw, because brand voice was it often then speaks to only specific target audience and it doesn't speak to a broader audience. But nowadays, a lot of the companies I'm working with are in a very different stage of growth, or they're single companies, and the brand, the voice or tone, so that creative element that gets infused into the copy, of course it has to perform. Of course, that's the website is not there to perform. Like I don't get it. It's like you can you know, because companies, when they're early stage, when they're startups, they also need to rely on performance. You know, they build up to a certain point because their product can do what it does. That's how you get customers. You don't win new customers as a startup because you have a cool brand. You don't. You might catch attention, but if the product is, then no one's, you know, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You're going to lose those customers anyway. You're not going to have retention. You know, it's a huge mess. So people might notice a company because of a cool brand, but they won't stick around to learn more about it if there's not that performance focus. But once they get to a stage where they've grown to a certain point, so they have existing customer base, people love them, you know, but they need to now differentiate themselves in the market to help set them up for further growth. That's when a lot more of that creativity is able to come in. So you've proved what you can do based on performance. Now it's time to actually to make that stand, to make that big announcement. Like you can double down on those creative elements, because then that's not going to affect your performance, because you can perform it. Now it's going to help amplify your performance. So I would still say probably 60% of that is still very focused on performance, but there is a much stronger element or flavor that needs to come in now. But first of all, again, depending on the company's stage of growth and depending on who their target audience is and what their goals are, but there's much stronger need for that brand flavor or that creativity to come in as a result to help amplify, help push their growth further forward.
Yeah. All right, last question. I mean, you have been already years in CRO and CRO copywriting. Me too. But if I look back in my couple of years of CRO, I have like some tests where I'm really proud of. Yeah, like some tests where I'm like, wow, this worked. This is like amazing, and I can still remember looking at the results, etc. Do you have any tests where you're like really proud, or any results where you would say, wow, I was really surprised about that, or I would never seen that coming, or any tests where you're really proud of?
Right. So one of them was I worked a while back with Wes Bush from the Product Led Institute on the book description for his book on Amazon, for the paperback book, but all the versions of the book. So he put it up, and he had some copy there, and it's fine. But you know, who really reads the product description, right? So we totally revamped it. We tripled the amount of copy, more than tripled. I think it was like 6 to 10 lines. It's huge, and it doubled his sales. But that variation has been running now for 3 years, so it's been doubling his sales for 3 years. So it's still relevant. Like it was, and he's raised the price of the book since, and other things have happened since, of course, but it's still performing. So it really goes to show that, again, it's not short copy is better, but often it's increasing the amount of copy, increasing the relevance of the copy, unpacking the value of what something has, so that people feel really excited about converting. Again, the reason why it really sticks out to me is because, again, it solidifies for me that no one wants to make a bad conversion decision. No one wants to regret clicking on that CTA button. No one wants to regret clicking purchase or regret filling in the lead generation form. No one wants to regret that moment. So what can you do to make sure? And of course, obviously, the company has to deliver a good user experience on the back end. You're not responsible for that. They have to do that as well. But what can you do to help them understand that there's that value waiting for them on the other side? So that's what we really tried to highlight with that product description, and like it's still working. The price of the book it went from $6 when it first came out. It's like $70. It's like $18 now, and it's still it's still working. So even though things have changed over time, by showing that value that's waiting for someone, it makes people feel happy and confident and everything about converting.
I'm always amazed when we did tests. We just tested one headline and it changed everything. It was a game changer. We had this one headline, customer comes on the page, and we just said, thank you for being here. We are happy that you decided for our brand, that you picked our brand. And we knew the customer did not make any decisions yet. But just telling them they made a decision for our brand, increased the conversion rate by 9% and the average order value by like 8%. And I was like, the client was saying, this is never going to work. This is not going to work because the customer did not decide anything yet. And I said, but that's exactly the point. We need to tell him he decided something, and then he still stick to his decision. And I was amazed. It's just like, I don't know, 5 words gave them like 18% more revenue. And there at that point, I was really like, okay, it's just one headline basically, or one short headline. And also, like, sometimes it's just such a small change in CRO that makes such a big difference. This is always super amazing for me. And also leaving out information sometimes makes them move forward. That we see them, for instance, easy example is to leave out the price. Makes them obviously go into the next step to look for the price, because it's super important information. And that's the point where I really realized, okay, conversion copywriting, it's really in the details, and then you have to really focus on it and spend time on it. And it's not like, okay, I write something, the next one writes something else, and then let someone else decide in the beginning.
Absolutely. And just to your point, it's that thinking that went into why we want to add these 5 words to the page. It's like that thinking is not just, let's do it because someone else, it wasn't just copying someone else's test. It was like there was a thought process that went into it. It said, well, let's make the customer feel good. Let's reaffirm that they've made a choice, even if they haven't made a purchase decision yet. Let's reaffirm that they've chosen to put these items in their cart already. That means that they like our brand on some level. So reaffirming a choice, making the customer feel good. It's that thinking that went into it. It wasn't just purely transactional.
I think that's a good last word to sum this up and say, let's make the customer happy, right? This is all what it's about.
Exactly.
All right. Thank you so much. It was really insightful. I enjoyed talking to you, and I hope I can see you live somewhere on stage next year. Anything planned yet already for next year?
There is something coming up in April, but I'm not sure if we're announcing it yet. So
Okay. Then
We'll let you know.
we will follow you on LinkedIn, and then we will see.
All right, no worries. It's been great speaking with you. Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.